Hello, my name is Scott, and we're going to compare Trinity to Greenbrier. Both companies offer railcar leasing and management services, inland barge, and also railcar manufacturing and refurbishment. In 2019, both companies had around 22,000 railcar deliveries. TRN saw a major decline, down to 11,500 in 2020, while GBX saw a minor decline, down to 20,000. TRN's market cap is $3 billion. GBX is about half that at $1.4 billion. In 2019, both companies had a little more than $100 million of net income. Net income is revenue minus expenses. But in 2020, TRN's net income really suffered, negative $226 million, even worse in the trailing 12 months at negative $387 million. While GBX's net income did suffer, but not nearly as much as TRN's. Both companies had pretty similar revenue in 2019 at a little over $3 billion, but TRN's dropped a lot down to $2 billion, while GBX only dropped a little to $2.8 billion. Both companies saw a decline in the trailing 12 months, but GBX's decline was more significant. TRN has negative free cash flow in 2019, 2020, and the trailing 12 months. Free cash flow is cash flow from operations minus capital expenditures. Capital expenditures are investments in property, plant, and equipment. So TRN is leaking a lot of cash each year. GBX did have negative free cash flow in 2019. That was mainly due to a cash outflow from the purchase of $143 million of inventory. But in 2020 and the trailing 12 months, they did have positive free cash flow. Let's take a look at their financial ratios. The PE ratio for GBX is 62.7. To calculate that, it's market cap divided by net income. 63 is a pretty weak PE ratio. You generally want to see a lot lower than that. But that's because we're looking at the net income from the trailing 12 months. Both companies have good price to sales ratios. Price to sales is market cap divided by revenue. Although GBX is doing much better at 0.7, that means investors are paying 70 cents for $1 revenue. Both companies also have good price to book ratios. Price to book is market cap over equity. TRN is at 1.8, GBX is doing better at 1.1. Equity is assets minus liabilities in the balance sheet. GBX has a much better balance sheet because they're 47% debt, compared to TRN's 75% debt. TRN has $5.2 billion of debt and $1.7 billion of equity, while GBX is $1.1 billion of debt and $1.3 billion of equity. Both companies have good current ratios. Current ratios are current assets over current liabilities. TRN is 2.9 and GBX is 3.4. So both companies can cover their current debts and payables with their current assets. Current assets are cash, accounts receivables, and inventory. GBX has nearly $600 million of cash on their latest balance sheet, which was $228.21. TRN has $178 million. Their latest balance sheet is $331.21. Debt is not a bad thing. It's a good way to grow your business. It's cheap financing. As long as you're using the debt to get a greater return than the interest payments you pay on the debt. A good ratio to look at to make sure the interest payments on your debt aren't eating into all your profits is the interest coverage ratio. Interest coverage ratio is operating income over interest expense. So TRN cannot even cover their interest payments with their operating income. GBX can cover the interest payments with their operating income, but just barely. I like to see at least 2.0 interest coverage ratio. 1.2 is really close. But we're looking at the operating income from the trailing 12 months. Most companies have struggled in the trailing 12 months. You should look at these ratios over a longer period of time. This is both companies' interest coverage ratios since 2017. So you can see TRN never had a really high interest coverage ratio. It was just 2.5 back in 2017, while GBX was close to 11. If you cannot pay the interest payment on your debt, then you may be forced into bankruptcy. Companies that were close to bankruptcy have been pushed over the edge from COVID. If the weak sales from COVID were to last another 2 to 3 years, a company like TRN would be in major trouble. Since TRN's interest coverage ratio is below 1, they need to take out more debt just to pay the interest payments on their debt. You can see the change in debt since 2017. Every year, TRN added more debt. They added over $800 million of debt in 2019. GBX has added debt overall, but not nearly at the pace as TRN has. Both companies pay a generous dividend. TRN is close to 3% and GBX is 2.3%. The industry average is 1.4%. Neither company has cut its dividend or suspended its dividend. TRN spends $89 million a year in dividend payments. TRN should cut its dividend payment, but the reason companies do not do this is because a dividend cut or suspension is a sign of trouble, and the stock price may crash if they cut their dividend payment, which is one of the last things a company wants. Thank you for watching the video and let me know what you think.